Hi everybody, I'm actually recording this in Washington, D.C. I'm here for a project, but I promised to put a lecture online, a class online. This will be not the longest class, it will be a relatively restricted amount of time here, but we are going to be looking at RTI. I thought I'd talk a little bit about response to intervention, which is how we design our literacy program. And then after that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Common Core curriculum and curriculum in general, because we speech-language pathologists, when we're working in a school setting, we are working really there to help kids not only speak, but really process information from their various classes. So first we'll look today a little bit at how the Common Core curriculum looks in the area of reading and writing, since that's the topic we have been looking at. We started looking at, I think, last time in some depth, and we're going to continue to spend significant time in this over the term here on literacy and reading. So we will look a little bit at the Common Core curriculum. We'll begin to look at that. Now, RTI, response to intervention, what does that mean? It means the use of what's called multi-tiered instruction to improve students' performance, prevent learning and behavior problems, and accurately identify children who may be eligible for special education services. It's a collaborative approach. It's not a mandated approach to education. It is in fact, whether RTI takes place in a school is very much up to the principal. So you'll find some schools where the RTI model is used, and then in other schools you may not find the model used. The concept, first of all, is multi-tiered instruction, and the major focus is that the second point in the list that's presented. Multi-tiered instruction to improve students' performance, yes, but it's B, prevent learning and behavior problems. And when we do our literacy program in schools, our objective is to work with students called Tier 2 students, and I'll get to what these tiers are about in a moment. But these are kids who are at risk for special education, being classified for needing special education services. And our effort is to keep them in the classroom and allow them to move them into where they might need maybe some support in the classroom, but that they will not need to qualify for special education services. But if so, then part of the, if that is the kids really do need the special service, then RTI intervention really gets to know the child, and will be maybe perhaps a more accurate approach to identify children who may be eligible for such services and require them. But it's that number 2 thing, prevent learning and behavior problems, which is where the focus lies. Now, in the RTI model, there are 3 tiers of instruction. Tier 1, activities geared for the whole classroom based on research about how children learn language. And so activities in the classroom may be tailored for individual students. By the way, these tiers represent levels at which the speech-language pathologist can participate in RTI work. So at Tier 1, the speech-language pathologist may work with the whole classroom side by side with the teacher, and I myself, many years ago, and I mean many years ago, worked for what we called back then Track 4, which was the precursor of District 75. Many of you will do practicum and perhaps even work in District 75 now. And it's in these days, these District 75 work is referred to as, I believe, 8 to 1 to 1 work, meaning that there are 8 children to 1 teacher to 1 para or assistant, in terms of, and that reflects more severe and profound developmental disabilities. And I would work with, that's exactly, this Tier 1 work was the kind of work I did back in the 70s, I'm afraid to say. I misspelled children, look at that, C-H-I-L-D-R-E-N, it says children. What can I say? Always something. But back then, I would work with the whole classroom, with the teacher, and do activities for kids with autistic spectrum disorder. We had kids in there with Down syndrome. There were kids with more severe and profound developmental disabilities, but I would demonstrate activities for language acquisition. These days, we do that in a typical classroom in which kids with disability are integrated with kids with who are typically achieving, and the focus is to maintain kids who are not yet classified in the classroom. And so these are, you may be asked to do language activities with the whole classroom, and that would be at Tier 1. Tier 2 involves activities designed for in-class small group instruction, designed for students who require additional support to access curriculum. The key there is access curriculum. That's the key at Tier 1 as well. Access curriculum. That is, we're there to support math, science, social studies, reading, literacy work, etc. We're there to support the teacher in the transmission of the curriculum to the child. So we may work with the entire class to support curriculum work, and I used to work from a very much a Piagetian, within a very much a constructivist Piagetian framework, to try to show teachers how they could get at the curriculum without necessarily simply lecturing like I'm doing to you right now, but instead giving the children hands-on experiences relevant to typically conservation and higher levels of reasoning, or promote higher levels of reasoning in the children, and language related to that, especially procedural and causal language, that is temporal chain and causal chain narrative type things. In any event, at Tier 2, you're working in class in small groups with children, and we, as speech pathologists, we should not become teacher assistants. We're not doing that. We're really trying to help, again, as it says here, children access the curriculum by working on language-based issues and really helping the teacher understand the linguistic and cognitive components of teaching and learning, as opposed to simply skill-based work, or a skill-based perspective on classroom activities. At Tier 3, that is, Tier 3 applies to children who are in fact now in a special classroom for children with special needs. These are kids who have an IEP. Tier 1 and Tier 2 activities deal with children who do not have IEPs. They are integrated with what used to be called the mainstream, but now it's the regular classroom. And the kids do not have IEPs. At Tier 3, the kids do have IEPs, and they are in classrooms like District 75, 8 to 1 to 1, or 12 to 1 to 1, which applies to children with language learning disabilities. Speech language pathologists' work there in the classroom would be more intensive, frequent, and individualized. And still an effort at Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 to, by the way, place speech services in the classroom, to support the teacher, perhaps even working side by side with the teacher, interestingly enough. And there's something called the ITI, Intensive Teaching Institute, where there is work reported on collaboration among teachers and teachers of typically achieving children, special educators, and support intervention, including speech language, especially perhaps speech language pathologists. Although we could also integrate occupational therapists, physical therapists, etc. You just don't see that as often in a school system. So we have Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Speech language pathologists can operate at Tier 1, working with the whole classroom, keeping kids integrated into a typical classroom. Working Tier 2 in a classroom with children who have not yet been assigned an IEP that is classified as having a disability and requiring special ed intervention, to try to, in fact, circumvent or avoid that, and maintain that child in an integrated classroom setting. Tier 3, where the children are now in a special education setting, and we support the teacher in that kind of a setting. So here the role of the SLP in Tier 1 is to screen, interpret screening, and assessment results, determine if there are any academic problems related to speech, language, and communication, analyze communication expectations within the classroom, and help the instructional staff address speech language issues so that the child can remain in the classroom, learn with the entire classroom, not require individualized work or small group work, and perhaps help the teacher modify, or the paraprofessional modify their behavior, their interactions, their lessons, so that they're accessible to all children. Also at Tier 1, we work with families. And we were trying to integrate into our literacy program, work with parents on reading to children at home. I, as a parent, was instructed by my own kids' teachers back in the day, which wasn't that long ago since I have relatively young children. So back when they were in the 4th, 5th grade, I was spoken to by the teacher about some of the expectations of the Common Core curriculum, which I will get to, either today or subsequent to today. I hope to at least start today with Common Core. And they made suggestions that when we interact with children with books, we really focus on literacy and go beyond simply reading or asking fact-type questions about the material in the book. So I'll get to that. Tier 2, in-depth screening, more in-depth screening. Again, the speech language pathologist conducts group sessions in class, pre-teaching curricular concepts, including spoken and developing spoken and written language skills. And I always coming again from a constructivist or Piagetian angle, try to help everybody, working with the children to understand the cognitive and linguistic demands of activities, and help the children, particularly kids with language problems, find alternate ways to engage with the material and develop language, and to monitor progress. So you're working in the classroom at Tier 2 with small groups, and you may take over the class too at times. And at Tier 3, hidden by my picture, our role is to provide frequent or intense intervention, intense assessment, refer for multidisciplinary evaluation. Now, that is, oh yeah, I want to say one more thing about RTI, and that is, let me back up, back to the definition maybe. RTI programs exist for restricted periods of time, delimited periods of time, where you assess, treat, or teach, and reassess. And the effort again is to provide intervention in the classroom. Now in our reading programs, we actually do pull kids out of the classroom, and we create our own classroom in a sense. So we have like 12 kids in our classroom working in small groups on reading. But that's not a true RTI program. A true RTI program would have us going into the regular classroom, and work with the teacher and with the kids in the classroom on literacy issues as they relate to the curriculum. Now our program does operate though like an RTI program, in that we assess and we work with kids over a 12-week period, usually 12 to 14 weeks, usually it's 12 weeks, a 12-week period. And then we reassess. So we're evaluating the efficacy of our intervention. And RTI programs are, again, delimited in terms of time frame. And it's test, intervene, reassess. Now we have found that kids that we work with in terms of reading level typically go up several reading levels during the period of time that we work with them. So we've had good results. But that RTI is a assess, intervene, reassess over a restricted period of time. And then what we do is move on to the next group of children. Now ideally we'd be working with teachers as well, and with parents or caregivers. We have not had a lot of opportunity to work with families as of yet. Common Core curriculum. Now here are some, I would like to say this, that the Common Core curriculum strikes me as really dealing with meta issues, meta and executive function issues. As I myself as a parent was instructed by my children's teachers, you don't only read to children, but you ask children to reflect upon the reading and writing process. So not only do you read and ask, well, who is the main character? What was the main idea? Etc. But you ask questions like, what do you think the reason is that the person wrote the story in the first place? Or why this book? Why? Ask questions like, I was told, by the way, as a parent, why this choice of words, like this particular word, and pick out words that you may want your child, vocabulary you might want your child to reflect upon. Or why did in Harry Potter? Why did the blanking on the name of what's her name? The author of how can I blank on Harry Potter because I'm doing this relatively late in the evening, and I haven't had dinner yet, quite frankly. So in any event, why does she? In each book, the book starts out with Harry at his evil uncle's house, and so why does she have that? Why does she maybe begin the book that way? These are some of the areas then of Common Core. So that's a meta approach to reading, and you see that starting right in the first grade, as I've seen in schools. Across grades, these are some of the areas, Common Core areas in curriculum standard areas in reading, across grades. Key ideas and details, craft and structure, how books are written. Key ideas and details in books, that's more traditional. Integration of knowledge and ideas, and range of reading and task complexity. Grades 2 to 5 are established foundational standards, phonics and word recognition and fluency. But in addition to that, again, craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas, and range of reading and task complexity. In writing standards across the grades, kids learn about text types and purposes. And that means things like some text or books are explanatory in nature, like math books, math textbooks, or speech-language pathology textbooks. Other types are fiction. Some texts are written to convince the reader of one thing or another. Some texts are autobiographical. They're supposed to be true. Other texts are fictional, and they're supposed to entertain and not be true. Well, I guess all texts are supposed to entertain, etc. Production and distribution of writing, and that includes through the computer, through the internet, and through these days, through all the kids are Snapchat, and you have a president of the United States distributing his typically his wrath through Twitter, etc. Production and distribution of writing, research to build and present knowledge, researching topics. That plays out at our level too, doesn't it? And range of writing, different styles, etc. Those are, notice again, this is not simply learning to write a sentence, or handwriting. No, this is meta reflection upon writing itself as a process. So grade 4, I selected grade 4 writing standards, anchor standards for writing, just to illustrate the way that what the Common Core looks like, and it's executive meta level focus, as I see it anyway. I again invite everybody, or I really assign you to download the Common Core curriculum onto your phone as an app. So text types and purposes, and kids are asked in the 4th grade to write arguments to support claims in an analysis of substantive topics or texts, using valid reasoning and relevant and sufficient evidence, i.e. research, and debate, really debate through writing. Write informative explanatory text to convey and examine and convey complex ideas and information clearly and accurately through the effective selection, organization, and analysis of content. Selection, organization, and analysis of content, that's executive function, isn't it? Grade 4 writing. Write narratives to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, well-chosen detail, and well-structured event sequences. Effective technique. Produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to the task and purpose. The computer keeps throwing things at me. Develop and strengthen writing is needed. I don't know why that clicked ahead, but develop and strengthen writing is needed by planning, revising, editing, rewriting, or trying a new approach. By the way, that's what I'm doing with you, isn't it? I'm editing your article summaries. Well, this is 642. I'm thinking of 601, the research, so I'm not doing that in this course. In the research course, however, LIU, Introduction to Research in Speech Language Pathology, whoever you had did just this. Help look for you to develop and strengthen your writing by planning, revising. That's my big deal. Revising. I expect you, the student, to edit and then let it go and then come back to it and revise and edit and revise and edit on an ongoing basis, including try a new approach to the your style or your paragraph or your what's the word I want to say, your writing. I can't say a new approach to your style. My brain is there's not a lot of cells left at the present time. And use technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing and to interact and collaborate with others. I hope interact and collaborate, produce and publish. Again, this is meta, executive, and reflecting on not only the production of the writing material, but sharing it, the social sharing of things, which is Snapchat, which is Instagram, which is Twitter, which is Facebook, and this is encouraged in the school setting. And research itself is a social experience. It's a social undertaking, so that you know about peer review. But even before peer review, one shares one's writing with one's colleagues. I work with Harriet Klein at NYU, and anything I do, I run by her, or I work with Helene Marshall here, who edits my efforts to produce this online material that I'm sharing with you. So interact and collaborate with others is also part of the Common Core curriculum. I think that's as far as I'm going to go actually right now. I'm not going to go into reading, but you'll see the reading standards quite similar to the writing standards. And that is, it's not just the writing, including punctuation and generating a sentence that has a subject, verb, and complement, and having parallel tense, and all the things that kids and you adults learn to do in terms of technique, but it's also the meta business of style, distribution, and it's really form, content, and use, isn't it? Because it's the ideas, it's the form you're using, as it corresponds with the reasons for writing, and the same thing can be said for reading. That reading comprises content, form, and use. This is content, form, and use applied beyond verbal language into literacy, both in terms of its expression through writing and comprehension through reading. There's a bug flying around. Well, in any event, at least I got some material posted for you, and this takes us a step further. It moves us a step further, and I'll continue with this when I see you, and also we'll continue. It's appropriate that I'll go back. I'll talk about the Common Core standards related to reading, and then we'll go back to some material in that area of reading and literacy, and then move into the more on executive function. Also, I think when we meet again, you will be presenting some of the standard norm referenced material on your PPT presentations, which will get us more into, again, this executive function business. So here, this is my little lecture for you, and I'll see you next week. Good night.